Hi everybody and welcome back to Lost Genre Reddit Stories. This post is from the subreddit True Off My Chest and it's by user SD Blazer. My wife and I are about to kick our daughter out. Don't worry, she's a grown 22-year-old college grad. She moved out, but moved back to save money about a year ago. She's employed full-time, and the only financial obligation she has aside from paying for the wedding she's planning at the end of this year is her $200 per month car note. We even paid half of her tuition all 4 years of school so she wouldn't have to pay student loans for the next 30 years, like my wife is still doing. She likes to complain about our meager expectations of her. Dishes, laundry, keeping her space clean, being respectful and considerate of the other 3 of us living in the house. These shouldn't be foreign concepts to her as she was only living away from home for 6 months before moving back in. She got engaged to a guy in a foreign country after 6 months of dating. Read talking on the phone for hours at a time, often on speaker while pacing the halls. She has only flown down to visit him 5 times for 3 to 5 days at a time. Not enough time to know who the other person truly is, in my opinion. Their relationship is chock full of red flag behavior from both of them. She tells us she has everything figured out, but constantly presents us with examples of how ill-prepared she is for marriage and being financially independent. Recently, our dialogue has escalated from us asking that she take into account the rest of us living in the house and how her actions affect us, or her screaming and storming off exclaiming that she can't wait to leave. The next time we have one of these heated conversations, my wife and I are going to inform her that it is no longer in anyone's best interest for her to continue living in our house. If she is truly an adult and feels she doesn't owe us the respect due to parents who are allowing their adult child to live in their house rent-free, preparing her meals for her, and covering her living expenses, she can blaze her own trail on her own dime. It's not fair to my wife, myself, or our teenage son to live in an environment fraught with turmoil. I love her, but if she believes she would be better off without us lording our rules over her, it's time to watch the little birdie fly. Well, OP, I 100% agree with you. I understand that she might be frustrated at her long-distance relationship and preparing a wedding and only seeing her fiancé just a couple of times or something like that, but that doesn't mean she gets to behave the way she's behaving. She's taking out her frustrations on the wrong people, the people that are actually helping her save in order to be able to pay for the wedding that she wants. So the next time she snaps at you, you can say something like, well, this is clearly not working for you and it's definitely not working for us. We understand that you may be frustrated or stressed out about having to plan your wedding, and we want to help you, but you need to control your attitude. Now, if her reaction to this is to start another screaming match or stomping off in a tantrum, then yeah, I would say the next step is to help her find a place to stay in the meantime. Now, regarding the red flags in their relationship, I get the impression that if you would try to help her notice these red flags, she's probably just gonna dig in her heels, have another tantrum that you don't understand her or something like that, and just go ahead and do it anyways. So if you do want to address those issues, don't do it in a confrontational way and just start up a conversation. Maybe she'll be able to put your mind at ease or see the red flags for what they are. What would you do if you were in OP's shoes? Would you kick your daughter out right away or would you give her some sort of timeline? Let me know in the comment section, and now let's move on to the community comments to see what they said. Scriggled says, why not bring it up now rather than wait for the next heated situation? Sit her down and bring up her attitude and work on getting a move-out date. And OP responds, of course you had to mention the rational thing to do. Sarcasm. That is really solid advice. It probably wouldn't be bad for us to deal with it that way, sooner rather than later. Reddit's TopBan96 says, I'd say that's the right thing to do, and I don't know if you guys know her boyfriend well or not. I'm assuming not, cause you stated she only saw him a few times as well. Maybe do a background check on him as well. Not saying there's anything wrong, but it would probably be good to know who he is and what he does, etc. But yet again, I'll say if you do kick her out, it's the right thing to do as a parent. Honestly, he is a very likable guy. He works for an American-based Christian missions nonprofit. I should probably run a background check on him just for peace of mind. Regardless, they both have a lot of growing up to do before being ready to marry a practical stranger. Predictable Throw says, if you use this as a gotcha card during the next fight, you're losing most of the effect. She will just see this as something you did to win that argument and not that she needs to grow up for her own sake. Sit her down, talk to her calmly about what kind of things she has achieved, and then tell her that you think it's time, now that she is a capable adult human being, to get the F out of your house. Additional information from OP's comments. I have read through the comments and the concerns everyone has brought up. It's nice to see everyone else's perspective on the situation. My plan was never to blow up on her during an argument and tell her to leave. She's not in a state to handle that, and I don't want to do irreparable damage in an already tenuous circumstance. My reference to the fight was that if it happens, then my wife and I will have to make some hard decisions. Not necessarily in the moment, but following another such incident. She wasn't always this entitled and disrespectful. She was raised to be polite, respectful, and considerate of others, and she is those things with almost everyone except us. Where the disconnect came from, I have no clue. I'm not a perfect parent and never claimed to be. I'm trying to give our daughter grace and the ability to excel at life in whatever way she chooses. It's not the way I would do it, but my parents and I had similar disagreements not that long ago when I was her age. The main difference is that when I moved back in with my parents at 23, it was just a quick landing place after getting out of an abusive relationship in another state. My dad came to me 2 weeks in and said either go back to school to finish your degree or get a job. I got a job and have been working ever since. Within a matter of 6 months, I was living somewhere else and have never moved back into their house. Within 2 years, my wife and I bought a house. Truthfully, I wouldn't mind her staying with us if she didn't believe that her being an adult means she should have an equal say in how my wife and I run our house. I know a lot of her attitude comes from her internal struggle to find herself. I would much rather she figures out what she truly needs and wants out of life before she becomes 100% reliant on someone who we barely know outside of Zoom calls and FaceTime calls, who lives in a foreign country where we can't do anything immediately to help when she gets into sticky situations. Being on her own will allow her to sink or swim, while her mom and I can actually help. After all, a 30-minute trip across town is a lot easier to do than a trip to the airport and being out thousands of dollars in air travel expenses. I do have to say, it's amusing to see how many Reddit psychologists or psychiatrists have psychoanalyzed my entire family based off of this single post and determined our family is dysfunctional. We aren't perfect, we have our issues, but I can say with confidence that we're not a family fraught with turmoil. We just happen to be dealing with this contentious issue currently. Also to note, I never said that mid-argument I would kick her out. I simply stated that if she has another one of these tantrums, we'd be asking her to move out. Perhaps a better way of saying it would be that we'd ask her what she wants to do about the living situation she feels she's trapped in. We're invested in her success and we're here when she needs a safe place to land if that ever were to happen. It est when she moved back in last year. We have discussed on multiple occasions in a civil manner the issues we would like her to address and the goals she needs to set for herself. These conversations either go ignored or she perceives these conversations as personal attacks and lashes out or shuts down. At this point, my wife and I decided it's not worth further discussion since we're at an impasse. Because of this pattern, nothing ever gets resolved and we eventually go right back to the same discussion points, beginning the cycle again. I want my daughter to succeed. She's brilliant, but naive. I don't think she's as equipped for her future as she claims to be, and the fact that she believes she has everything figured out means we cannot question her regarding how her plan will work. As I said before, what's most concerning is that I can help her when she's a few minutes down the highway. If she moves to a foreign country, we will not be nearly as close by, and she may not have easy options to leave as she doesn't have a friend group in the country where she's moving to, outside of her fiancé's family and friends. Our son goes out of town next weekend with family and friends. Perhaps that will afford us the opportunity to come up with some questions she'll need to figure out the answers to. Things like financial goals, emotional goals, career goals, her living arrangements, etc. I'm just weary from coming home to find out she and my wife had a knockdown drag-out fight because my daughter feels she knows best how to manage her life and the lives of those around her. Parenting is hard enough, and when you factor in an adult child who thinks they're living under the oppressive rule of their parents, it makes for a much more difficult situation. When my brother and I felt this way, we moved out. We didn't fight with our parents, we simply blazed our own trail and learned how to overcome adversity. As for her relationship, I'm not here to hinder her. My parents didn't dictate any aspect of my relationship with my first college girlfriend, despite the fact that she constantly crapped on them to their faces and behind their backs. And I won't intervene with their relationship either. I believe she and her fiancé are in love and care for one another deeply. It's an immature love, but the way I loved my wife when we got married is vastly different than the connection we have now. So I know that will evolve into something less self-serving over time. Since he cannot legally visit the US currently, she is the only one able to travel. We've encouraged her to move there, get a cheap apartment, a job, and actually date him before marrying and moving in with him. For whatever reason, this is a hard no from her, and so we leave it be. Alright, well, all in all, the community gave OP some pretty decent advice about how to approach his daughter and try to talk to her. And OP gave us a lot of context that actually puts this whole thing into proper perspective. So now it's time to move on with the first of two updates. But of course you know that right now I'm going to recommend a great playlist of mine like this one that only has updated stories. So you can go check it out after this video. Now let's move on to the first update. So we, wife, daughter, and I had a discussion today regarding the issues at hand. I explained that we wish to see her succeed in every facet of life, but that her attitude recently has left much to be desired. No voices were raised, no harsh words were exchanged, but we were firm and direct regarding our expectations of her. I also explained to her that she was welcome to continue living with us, but that she'd be a contributing member to the family unit, not an equal partner with equal say in how the household is run. I even shared with her the results of a quick search in our area for bedrooms for rent starting at $750 to demonstrate the difference between our arrangement, no rent, she pays for her car, gas and leisure, and the real world living in someone else's spare room while paying substantial cash for the space. We agreed that as our adult child, she is free to voice concerns to us and allow us to decide how to best handle those, but that her concerns did not equal our submission to her wishes. I told her that equals share burdens equally, and that if she was paying a quarter of the mortgage, health insurance, phone bill, utilities, etc., she might have a leg to stand on, but until that happens, she's an occupant of the house. She was quiet and didn't react much more beyond stating that she agreed with what my wife and I were saying. I don't know whether this was truly productive or if she simply humored us to avoid more of a confrontation. Time will tell whether she actually listened to what we talked about. She'll be gone for the next week, and honestly, I think it'll be good for everyone. Now, her behavior has always been cautiously defiant. She'll ask permission to do insignificant things, but will make big decisions hastily and without considering the long-term repercussions. So I can't say it's a huge departure, but it is concerning within the context of the current situation, being engaged and planning her wedding. She's had a job since she was 16, so there shouldn't be an issue of newness or adjustment to the workforce. I honestly think she's trying too hard to make everything happen all on her own. We have offered help, financial and otherwise, in the planning of her wedding, but she and her fiancé supposedly have everything figured out. As it stands now, she couldn't move closer to him since she has no money and he has no space for her to move in, living with family, and it would be frowned upon to move her in. I think we're in a good spot now, but we can only hope it remains that way for the next few months. Alright, well from that first update, it seems that OP and his wife have handled this really well. So now it's time to move on to the final update that is 7 months after the original post. So maybe the original title was hyperbolic. My wife and I would never throw her on the streets, but the tension between everyone in the house was obvious and counterproductive. We never kicked our daughter out, but I did tell her during one of our heated exchanges that she might want to consider finding a place to stay if she felt we were a hindrance to her independence. She quickly shut down the idea when I told her rooms in our hometown were renting for almost as much as our mortgage payment. The argumentative nature of our interactions was still present, but after she and I had several deep discussions in the following months, things improved. A lot of our arguments revolved around her stress trying to plan a wedding, balance work, and coordinate how she'd integrate into life in a new country while still living in the US. We just happened to be the easiest target when she needed a place to unload. I'm a problem solver by nature, and it's hard for me to listen to someone vent and explain an issue and not be working on a solution in my head. I suppose my daughter really just wanted a sympathetic ear and no input from me on how to solve her problems. I worked actively to improve the way I addressed her emotions and opinions, and things got much better. We did have a hiccup a couple of weeks before she moved. It started because of a winter coat. I had suggested that even though her new home would be in a tropical climate, it might be wise to take a winter coat or heavy jacket with her. My logic was simply that she may end up flying into a country where she'd need cold weather apparel, and without a coat, it would cost her at least $100 to get a reasonably good coat. Words were exchanged and we agreed to disagree on the concept. Turns out, she thought I was suggesting she take everything she had in the house with her because we didn't want any sign that she had ever lived in the house. I don't know how she drew the conclusion that I didn't want any trace of her from my comment, but that was what she gleaned from my advice. In the weeks before she moved, we took a beach vacation with all of us and my parents, visited my in-laws, had family movie nights, ate meals from our favorite restaurants, had bridal showers, practiced our daddy-daughter dance while crying like babies, sold her car for $2,000 more than what she bought it for 2 years prior, and helped her get all of her packing done. After Thanksgiving, we took her to the airport and she was gone. 2.5 weeks later, we headed down for the wedding. We met our son-in-law and his family for the first time, and despite the language barrier, we were all enjoying each other's company. I managed to dust off my 6 years of high school and college Spanish and gave my daddy's speech in both Spanish and English at the reception. The ceremony was beautiful. My daughter was beautiful. My whole family, new, extended, and immediate, were beautiful and handsome. Since the wedding, we stay in touch with each other almost every day. She's starting to see a lot of things from a different perspective, and I know a lot of that is because she has her own life now with her husband. I couldn't help but chuckle when she explained how cold one of their honeymoon destinations was, and that she was glad to have her coat. I even joked with her about how being overprepared for the situation saved her a lot of headache and some money. I've never seen her so happy, and I'm glad she found a man who loves her and treats her well. We are eagerly looking forward to having her come to visit in about 2 months. I'm sure the pleasant outcome will probably disappoint many fellow Redditors. I mean, who doesn't love piling on a frustrated parent by shaming them and scoffing at every decision they have made to give their kid a better start than they ever had at her age? Sarcasm. Well, OP, no disappointment here. I loved the update. It was fantastic. I think you guys handled this great. So all that I have left to say is that I hope you enjoy your daughter's visit in 2 months and that more visits come in the near future. Thank you so much for sharing, OP, and all the best. Take care. Now let's continue riding that positive wave from the update with the Mood Booster post. This post is from the subreddit Malicious Compliance, and it's by user Not Outrageous. Why did they get in for free? Let me fix that. I used to work as a bouncer or doorman at a bar that charged a $2 cover on weekend nights. Everyone paid to get in with only one exception: party buses. We had an agreement with the different party bus operators that if they brought their groups to our bar, they would get in for free. Lively crowds are good for business. So one night I'm working and a guy comes in with his girlfriend and I tell him it's $2 a head. He grumbles about it and I give him the same line I tell everyone who complains. A $2 cover is the cheapest thing you will buy here tonight. If you can't afford it, you might want to go somewhere else. He doesn't want to look cheap in front of his lady, so of course he pays. A couple of minutes later, he's back saying he just talked to some people who didn't have to pay and wants to know why he got singled out. I tell him about the party bus rule and say those people must have come in on a bus. He motions towards some people sitting with his girlfriend and tells me, "You didn't charge my friends and they didn't come on a bus." I recognized the people, and when they came in, I asked them if they were from the bus, and they said yes. So they lied to me. It happens, and normally I wouldn't worry about it. I tell him, well, it sounds like I made a mistake. I guess it's their lucky night. That's my hint to him that he should let it go. That's not good enough for him. He gets louder and keeps demanding I refund his $4 to keep things fair. I had it with him. I tell him, you're right, it's not fair. Let me fix it for you. He smirks because he thinks he's getting a refund, but he doesn't realize all I'm giving is some sweet malicious compliance. His smirk disappeared when I stepped away from the cash drawer and walked over to where his friends were sitting. In my most polite voice, I said, "Hey, sorry to bother you guys, but there's a $2 cover tonight, and your friend here told me you didn't pay. I must have misheard you when I asked if you were with the party bus, but I need to collect the cover from you now." The looks of betrayal they gave him were priceless. I collected their covers, smiled, and loudly thanked him for being so honest. Then I walked back to my post and watched them proceed to rip him a new one. Ah man, he just needed to make it fair for $4. Thank you so much for sharing, OP. This was epic. And that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch it. Now, if you've gotten to this point in the video, I assume that you like these stories that I'm reading out. So here are a couple more that you might enjoy. And if you don't have any time to watch another story right now, save it for later. And also, don't forget to hit that subscribe button.